Hey guys, Leah Michelle Resistance Chicks. It's March 15th, 2017. We're going to take you to Nigel Farage.
We are eagerly waiting for the election results, but we didn't want to bring you any because it's still kind of up in the air.
Right.
Geert
Wilders.
Okay. So, Marine Le Pen was on Nigel Farage's
Radio
show last night, and she had some harsh words for Theresa May. And Nigel was kind of giggling a little bit about why Theresa kind of pulled back the reins a little bit on the Brexit.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to listen to his little take on what's going on with Brexit right now, and then we're going to get to the Le Pen radio program. But I wanted to highlight some of the things that she said first. Marine Le Pen has mocked Theresa May for being good at getting it wrong after the UK Prime Minister failed to meet with her, but did host her main rival. Why would that be? Why would that be? In an interview with former UKIP leader Nigel Farage for radio station LBC, Miss Le Pen criticised Mrs. May for inviting Emmanuel Macron for talks at Downing Street, describing him as the opposite of what Brexit stands for. She said the Prime Minister would eventually be forced to meet with her if she wins the presidential election in a couple months. You're going to have to see me face to face, Miss May, even if you don't like me. Farage says, well, that's true, and actually with Donald Trump, she wasn't for Donald Trump, and she'd meet with him too. Miss Le Pen added, she is good at getting it wrong, but this is rather reassuring. Get it? With Trump.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She did, however, praise Mrs. May for sticking to the will of the people by implementing Brexit and said Parliament's acceptance of the vote was remarkable and honourable. Great Britain has demonstrated that there is a democratic choice, and I believe that the way in which Parliament respects the will of the British people is quite remarkable and honourable, she says. I say this quite easily because in 2005, the French said no to the draft constitution in the referendum, and the left and the right leaders joined forces to deny the popular will.
That's
so this is a signal conveyed by British to all peoples who wish to restore sovereignty and freedom.
Right.
So you are a beacon, a shining light to a lot of people in Europe who don't want to be under European rule, but they really have a fight in their hands, and it might take years. Nigel's been working for a long time.
Yeah.
So even if Geert Wilders doesn't win this go round, keep pressing forward for the will of the people.
And a lot of you guys have expressed that you understand that even if Geert doesn't win, or even if Le Pen, God forbid, doesn't win.
She says interesting, despite threats and in spite of blackmail, the leaders are sticking to the will of the people.
That is interesting.
But she did find it difficult to understand the consistency of the ideas and convictions for talking to Emmanuel over
and
talking
not
to
her. Yeah,
Marine.
it's ridiculous.
So, all right, let's get to it. Are you ready? Here we go, Nigel Farage.
Good evening, everybody. Well, after
Good
we came on
evening,
there last
Nigel.
night, as predicted, the final obstacle to getting Article 50 cleared, the path open for it to be triggered, happened when the House of Lords backed down, and thank goodness they did. So today, I thought, was going to be the day. Now, we did talk a bit last night about perhaps being blown off course a little bit by Nicola Sturgeon, but does the government not look weak? Doesn't Mrs. May look weak, having spent 9 months to get us to this point, not to have triggered Article 50 today? Well,
So it's like being pregnant and not get a little...
the Prime Minister spoke in the House of Commons earlier, and this is a little of what she said.
Wait, this is funny. We got that clip?
No?
Wait.
No, we haven't got a clip. I'm
Wait.
sorry, I apologise for that. Well, whatever. She spoke to
We'll
the
have the
Commons
clip in a
today,
minute.
and it was, I have to tell you, somewhat lacklustre. She says it's all on course, and we're going to try and get the clip again. Let's listen to the Prime Minister.
So we remain on track with the timetable I set out 6 months ago, and I will return to this House before the end of this month to notify when I have formally triggered Article 50 and begun the process through which the United Kingdom will leave the European Union. This will be a defining moment for our whole country as we begin to forge a new relationship with Europe.
well, that's fine, we've heard it all before, but why don't we just get on with it? I mean, goodness me, we're still paying in a net £30 million every single day.
Okay, for those of you that are in America, you can't quite fathom that, but for every single day that Britain is in the EU, they are paying
$30 million.
$30 million roughly.
Right.
Every day to stay in there. So of course they want to get out, and of course the EU doesn't want to let them. Right. You know, that sort of thing. Sorry, go ahead.
So the sooner we trigger Article 50 and get out of this club, and it's a lot of money, isn't it? Have a look at this building behind me. This is where all your money's going. I mean, there's plenty of it. Oh, and by the way, I'm in Strasbourg. This is replicated in Brussels. Oh, and I nearly forgot. There's also a European Parliament HQ in Luxembourg as well. So I want us to stop paying all this money. I want us to be free of what I see as this political prison. I think the government looks very weak by saying it's going to be another couple of weeks before we trigger Article 50. But I wonder what you...
Okay, so now we're going to go to Marine Le Pen. Here we go. Right here through the commercials. Oh.
Had Brexit, we had Trump, we had the Italians rejecting the government in a referendum and the Prime Minister going. We've got Dutch elections happening tomorrow. But I think the French presidential election is as big an event as any of those. Now, there are three front runners. One of them, Francois Fillon, who for 6 years was the French Prime Minister, a Conservative. He was favoured. He was the number one choice of many, or seemed to be. He's in some trouble. He's now been placed under formal investigation because of the money that he paid to his wife and his children for allegedly not doing the job, though taking public money. The second big front runner is Emmanuel Macron, 39 years old, good looking, centre-left, a big supporter of the European Union, big believer of the euro, big supporter of a European army, and he is absolutely up there
Just the
in the
Euro
opinion
boy
polls.
all
And I was
around.
amazed when a couple of weeks ago, Theresa May invited him to number 10 Downing Street for a meeting and allowed him to do a press conference on the steps of Downing Street. I thought, why is a Conservative Prime Minister supporting a left-of-centre candidate?
Question.
And yet, she refused to meet Marine Le Pen. Now, bear in mind, there were 300,000 French voters living and working in London, and yet they'd been given, in a sense, a PR puff for Emmanuel Macron. So I thought, perhaps I'd try and do something about that, try and help to redress that balance.
Go, Nigel!
So the answer is, the photograph that you've seen on Twitter with Marine Le Pen and myself was me in her head office in Paris yesterday afternoon, and I decided I wasn't going to support her, I wasn't going to oppose her, I was going to interview her exclusively for LBC. Here's just a little taste of what she said. Nigel Farage, and today, exclusively for LBC, I'm going to be interviewing Marine Le Pen, the French presidential candidate and the front runner in the election. It's a two-round election, the first one in April and the second one in May. Marine, thank you for agreeing to do this.
It's a pleasure.
Britain leaving the European
Look at her
Union,
smile.
what does it mean for the European Union? What does it mean for France, and in particular for this election?
Bon, alors, évidemment, c'est un signal
Obviously,
fort que,
it's a very strong signal. There is at least one way of finding the keys to the jail, because we had been told that it was not possible to leave the EU, and the UK has just demonstrated that when the people want it, well, we can set up the conditions to exit the EU. So thank you for sort of showing us the way out of this huge prison, which is the EU for the peoples. And it is very lucky for the UK, and everybody knows that, because beyond the strategy of fear implemented before Brexit, today the UK is already reaping the benefits, all the benefits of this bold decision that the people made. It makes it possible to be free and to move forward without the EU poking a knife in your ribs and obliging you to go where you don't want to go. It means that you can control your borders, your economy, you can negotiate trade agreements that are in the interest of your country.
Now, your position in regard to this election is what you've said is that you will renegotiate France's relationship with the European Union and then put it to a referendum of the French people. It's interesting because David Cameron said exactly the same thing. He said he'd renegotiate with the European Union, he would put it to a referendum, but he of course was doing it with the belief that the United Kingdom would then stay part of the European Union. Are you doing a mirror opposite of David Cameron? Are you doing this because actually in your heart you've decided the time has come for France to leave the EU?
Well, I think that's the fundamental difference between Mr. Cameron and myself. Mr. Cameron decided to go ahead with a referendum for election reasons. The idea was to appeal to those in his movement who felt closer to UKIP than to a pro-European vision. And so thank you for reminding us that Mr. Cameron would never have contemplated the possibility of the UK leaving the EU, and the negotiation was not really a negotiation, it was a farce. And this is not at all my frame of mind for the negotiation. I was quite clear with the French in this regard. I told them we want to restore the four sovereignties, territorial, monetary, economic and legislative, the superiority and the law prevailing over European directives, and there will be a referendum. And if the negotiation fails and if the French do not want to leave the EU, as I said, I would step down, because nothing in the 144 commitments can be implemented in the prison of the EU, whether it be in terms of the economy, in terms of corporations, in terms of tax, fighting immigration, or when it comes to preserving our identity. Nothing is possible within the EU today.
So let's be absolutely clear. You've decided that it's right for France to leave the European Union.
If I cannot restore those four sovereignties, and if I do restore them, I won't be the only one involved in the negotiation, because a great many countries, just like France, are suffering, as was the case of the UK. There is Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, and I am convinced that France, which is a great country, could lead this negotiation, and other countries will join in to support the claims. And if we do succeed, the EU will no longer be the EU, just like the USSR that would accept private property or multiple parties or freedom of the press. That would no longer be the USSR. In that case, the EU would change its nature and it will become a Europe of nations and cooperation that we would like to have. And in that case, it would give all the European countries the freedom that they have been lacking and that make us slaves.
Yes, I mean, in a sense, your renegotiation, if you win this election, is to go to Brussels and say, change everything or we're leaving.
C'est exactement cela.
That's exactly right. Change everything and give us back what you have taken from us. Give the people back sovereignty it deserves. People who cannot decide on its immigration policy, who comes in, who stays on the territory, who cannot make any laws without asking for technocratic supranational authority, people who cannot do economic patriotism for its national corporations, people who cannot decide on its trade agreements with such and such a country. It's not a free people. We have fought. We have fought it out for a long time. The UK has fought it out, so has France, in order to become free countries, fully free countries, and I am not going to give up.
Now, because part of that is leaving the euro. And I think, I mean, frankly, almost everybody, apart from Mr. Juncker and Mr. Verhofstadt, would agree that the euro has been a catastrophe for the Mediterranean countries. And I think of Greece and Portugal and Spain, and we know it's not working. Let me ask you something. Do you have a plan? Do you have the expertise around you to get out of the euro and to reinstate the French franc? Because if I was a middle-class French voter, let's say that I owned a decent property, I had a business, and I'd be thinking, well, what Marine Le Pen says to me about sovereignty, yeah, that makes sense. We believe in the nation state, we believe in governing ourselves, but we're in the euro. How can she guarantee me that we'll leave the euro without something terrible happening to our finances?
But of course, we have the expertise, we have a great many professionals, economists, people who work in banks, including in central banks, and they have been working on the euro exit plan for many months. But for 15th century, France had national currency, so we do know.
So I can't help but think of the French Revolution when I think of Brexit.
Right, it was a bloody mess, but this seems more pacifistic. Not that they're like pacifists, that they want to just sit by and do nothing, but not quite like, let's just kill everyone.
Right, so I think that there's the essence of the French Revolution with Rousseau and Montesquieu and Lafayette and using the works of John Locke. When you read these great minds, it's about individual freedom. It's about the rights of the individual,
right,
and the laws of nature and nature's God. What we are entitled to, the right to our own sovereignty,
right,
the right to the work of your own hands.
Right.
If you read Locke's First Treatise and Second Treatise, especially what you put your hands to, you get to reap those rewards.
Exactly.
And the problem with something like the European Union is that you have very little control over your life,
right,
your individual life, what you do when you wake up every single day, over the pricings that you make, over the deals that you make, when you have this big giant oligarchy over many nations who speak different languages. People don't recognize that the language barrier is huge. And when you recognize that you have to have all these interpreters, you're getting the gears are grinding.
Right. Well, not only that, but you're having, it's not just a language barrier. Okay, it's a way of life barrier. Right. It's what you have grown up with, what you're surrounded with, what makes your worldview, and it's very difficult to have all those come together. But I think to sum up, what you're trying to get across is that it's a crying shame that you guys, that the French, I should say, went through the bloodiest revolution ever, only to lose it all. Now, what I see here with Le Pen is her way of, it's almost like, we have a saying around our house, because it comes from scripture, everything is redeemable. And I feel like with Le Pen, France has an opportunity to redeem the bloody French Revolution and to do it right. Now, I want to point,
you're no better off. I was walking the dogs, and as I was thinking about this, you're no better off, really, under the EU than you were under the royalty before.
Right.
You know, Russia had its same bloody revolution.
Right.
Kicking out the czars.
And then they had communism.
And then they had something even worse.
Exactly.
So, but what you have when you have something, you have the ability to vote. You have this ability to just go to the ballot box.
Right.
And you don't have to get the guillotines out. You don't have to bring out everyone and their daughters and chop their heads off so they're making movies later on.
It was pretty bad.
And the violence, you know, when we read Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities and we see the violence that went on.
Les Mis or something.
Exactly. There's a fight that went on and it was within you, but it's never right to just go and just take with that violent, murderous spirit that we actually see within Islam.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So there's a murderous spirit within people, and so when I'm seeing this revolution, and it boggles my mind that you have this, like you said, you have this whole revolution, and you went through this bloody revolution, and now you've got the EU and a socialist government where it's basically like a mesh of non-freedom,
right, and
non-individual rights.
I want to address a couple of the things that she said that really hit me really heavily. Was she said that if after this referendum, if she gets elected, and then the referendum, if she is not able to achieve Brexit, she says that she'll step down.
Right.
Because all of the things that she has promised to give to the French people, freedom, essentially, cannot be achieved within the European Union. And then I loved how Nigel called her out and just said, you're calling for, if you get elected, and you go in there, everything is going to have to change within the European Union. And I like how she addressed how it's going to be kind of a Europe of nations, where it's almost kind of like a collective people like, listen, we want to kind of incorporate, right? But not everybody has to incorporate. And then lastly, I love that he pegged her with the question on the euro. Mm-hmm. Because that is such a really valid question. And she had such a very simple answer. How long have we operated?
We're good.
We
don't need, it's like a children who are like, 25 years old and they're like, "Do you sure you should move out?
Right.
Are you sure you can take care of yourself?"
Right.
But it's even worse than that.
No, it's actually like looking at a 65-year-old man saying, "Are you sure you can move out?" Well, I lived by myself for like 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, seriously. That's
kind of
really what it's like. Like, yes, I'm an adult. It's kind of like my mom, the peanut gallery. Leah and I just drive everywhere. We're kind of like chauffeurs. Leah and I prefer to drive. Leah likes to drive even more than I do. So when we go places, if our mom goes with us, we're driving. So then when she goes to get in the car or something like that, and she does drive, and she's actually a very, very good driver. She drove almost our entire lives when we were younger, obviously. And Leah and I are like, "Hey, wait, are you sure?" And she'll just give us this look like, "Dude, I've been driving since like before you were born. Okay? I've been driving. I've been doing this. Duh. And nothing has changed. The road laws are the same. I can drive." It's the same thing with the French. It's great. Like, listen, we can drive this thing. Give us our own money back. And our economy, I can almost guarantee you she has plans in place that I think she kind of has stars in her eyes, rightfully so, that the economy is going to boom if they can come out of the euro. Because it already is a failing system.
Russia, when they lifted out of communism, look what happened.
Exactly.
Anytime you've got some, the EU is socialism on steroids.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
It's like communism with a happy face. Like, aren't you all enjoying this life that we tell you can do this, and it's like communism for nations.
All right, so I didn't mean to cut you off there. My head was thinking ahead faster. We want to wrap this one up. We can't sit here and do this entire thing with you guys. It's 40 minutes long. But if you go to Orion Prime, ORION PRIME, you can find this full interview. And we will try to put a link. If not, I'm sure you guys can spell and you can find it. Where you can watch the rest of it because it's fantastic. I mean, this is the dream team here.
Right.
I mean, we've got Nigel, we've got Le Pen, talking about things that really matter. So if you're an American and you're not really sure about what's going on in the EU, you're not really sure about Brexit, you're not sure about Brexit, you don't know, just go and watch them and fall in love with them like we have.
And you're not, it's so funny. You're not going to agree with everything that they say, but so much. We have to get out from under the thumb of globalism. And if Clinton had been elected, it would have been a nail in the coffin for us.
Right. It wouldn't have just been the European Union. It would have been the world global.
Right. Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
They already had their Clinton global initiative. They were already working with the leaders of the EU. I mean, you have Obama over there telling you that in the UK that you should not leave the European Union, like he's your daddy. So, all right,
guys. So this wraps. I mean, we could sit here all day with them, but we do have more stuff that we need to bring with you. And it's a big day for the Netherlands. So we want to cover a lot of that stuff too. So this is Leah Michelle signing off for Resistance Chicks, where it's not a conspiracy theory if it's the truth. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to Mass Faith 3 and Resistance Chicks. Ring that bell for notifications so you get an email every time we put out a new video. And find us on Facebook and Twitter. We love you guys. God bless. God bless Brexit and Nexit. All right. See you guys.